Unfortunately, more injury news. Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be out to begin the season. Let's play the 240 game for another bunch of NBA teams and figure out some opening night rotations. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and to continue listening to this show, you're going to need to fill out an NDA, link in bio. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get the season started with a big return on FanDuel. Just place a $5 bet, your first $5 bet, and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. We're going to talk about the Isaiah Hartenstein injury news when we get to the Thunder and talk about their 240 game. We've got 8 more teams we're going to cover today. We're going to start off with the Miami Heat, and we're going to end with the Philadelphia 76ers. So let's get into it and go through those teams and see what we think for opening night, rotations, minutes ideas, and again, you know the idea of the 240 game. When you want to cape for a player and you want to find out the minutes and the value and all that sort of stuff, they've got to be able to get enough playing time. And Miami's one of those teams where there are people making moves and making decisions and making draft picks where it's just going to be really hard to get there. Let's start by looking at what their projected starters are. I've got Tyler Hero at 34 minutes and Terry Rozier at 33 minutes. That could be 33 each, whatever. It's around that mark. I don't think there's any real doubt that they start together. Jimmy Butler at the 3 playing 34 minutes. Unbelievably, the Heat had a back-to-back in preseason for God knows what reason, and Butler played in the back-to-back. So while you can say, numerous things you can say about Jimmy, people will say, well, it's contract year, he's going to be serious, he's going to play him all these games this season, so I'm more in on drafting him. So if you say that, and if you believe that, what that also means is that you believe that hard-ass Jimmy Butler, ultimate competitor Jimmy Butler, hasn't been trying for any previous seasons. That's what you believe. If you think that Jimmy is going to ramp it up because of contract year and all this stuff, that means that you believe that this hard competitor who is the toughest guy going around has not been trying. And that's okay if that's what you want to believe, but I believe that is the only way you can view that. Or I think a lot of the time that he took it off is because he's 34 and his body is beaten up and he needs games off. And I don't think that this idea, and he's also come out and said this, but also he lies all the time. I don't care, I don't need money, I just want blah, blah, blah. He can say what he wants, right? His body is beaten up. He is old. He gets hurt. And it is his best interest to try and preserve that in order to be healthy for the important games at the end of the season. Because, of course, he didn't play in the playoffs last season and gets hurt all the time. I got Butler at 34 minutes. I am very, very certain they are starting Little Chungus Nikola Jovic at power forward. I've got him only at 22 minutes. That could be more. It could be 26. Jovic has had some better moments. I still don't love him, and I don't love his overall fantasy profile, but I think he's going to start. And then three-point shooting legend Bam Adebayo at 34 minutes, who is taking a million threes. I don't think that three-point attempt rate is going to necessarily carry over to the regular season, but down the stretch last season, I think he was 14% three-point attempt rate. If it's 18 or 19 this season, I wouldn't be surprised. I think overall for the season last year, he was at 5. So expect more threes, but that will drop his field goal percentage. Almost undoubtedly, that will drop his field goal percentage. I would think that long-term would enable someone like Kel'el Ware to play alongside Bam. But again, if we're going to play the 240 game, I don't think there's enough minutes for someone like Ware for us to get excited about drafting when he goes in every one of my mock drafts towards the end. And you can make arguments and cut minutes down to play the 240 game, but I've got him at 12 minutes, Ware. 12. I think there'll be some small ball lineups where Jovic plays center, and maybe like I've got 34 of Bam and 12 of Ware, that's 46. You give him 2 minutes of some small ball Jovic. You could put Ware to 14 if you want. You could put Ware to 18 if you want. But that's 6 extra minutes, and I'm not really sure where it comes from. Because I've got Jaime Jaquez playing only 25 minutes, which of course, 25 minutes of Jaime Jaquez is not a 12-team league player. He needs 29 minutes and a starter to be out to be 12-team relevant. And he does get drafted, and I'm okay with that if you've got more of a deeper bench of stash ability. But we saw, when the team was healthy, He was like 220th in fantasy, nowhere near it. He needs someone out. So again, if you want to find those extra 6 minutes for Kel'el Ware to push him to 18, also, he's going to need 23 to be a 12-team league guy, I think, and I have no idea where you get those 11 minutes from. I've got Duncan Robinson, who played like 29 minutes a night last season when Hero was out. I've got him only at 20 minutes. Okay, let's argue that maybe he goes to 17, and then those 3 minutes go to Ware. Okay, all right. Do you think we actually think we're going Robinson to 17? It's possible. Newly acquired Alec Burks. I've got it 12 minutes. 12. And I've got Joshua Richardson at 14. There's no fat to trim off those minutes. It is easy to say, okay, Duncan Robinson, let's play him 18. That doesn't seem likely. Maybe it is. Will Jaquez play less than 25? Will the starters, Bam, Jimmy, Hero, Rozier, play less than 33? Seems really unlikely. Jovic, will he play less than 22? Also unlikely. So how does Jaquez play enough? How does Ware play enough? It requires injuries, and injuries will happen. But on a day-to-day, night-to-night basis, that upside really, it's hard for me to see where it is. Always open to your ideas. If you can see a way they might do something different, you might say they just won't play Burks at all. I don't agree with that, but that could happen. His 12 minutes could go. Ware goes to 20 minutes. 4 minutes goes on to Jaquez at 29, and bang, we're set. That's possible. But this is how I think it's going to roll out, and it's not good for trying to get that value into players like Ware or Jaquez coming off the bench. We'll go to Milwaukee, who is not going to be, well, they're not going to have Khris Middleton to begin the season, so I'm not including him. I've got Lillard at 35 minutes. I've got Gary Trent at 30. I've got Taurean Prince, the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince, starting in place of Middleton, which I think is pretty much locked in. He'll get 29 minutes and be useful for 16-team leagues. I've got Giannis at 35 and Brook Lopez at 30. We know that Glenn Rivers, MD, was playing Giannis more than Budenholzer was. So that's why I've got him at 35. Budenholzer would keep him 33, 32. But Doc was playing Giannis a lot more. Giannis with a wild quote yesterday, if we don't win the championship, maybe I get traded. Was he saying he's going to ask for a trade, or he thinks the team's going to just pull the rug and trade him away? Absolutely wild quote from Giannis, that one. Middleton's injured though. And when Middleton comes back, I expect he plays like 25 minutes initially, then pushes it back to 30. But he probably isn't there opening night. I've only got at the moment the Bucks running a 9-man rotation. I've got Bobby Portis at 23. I've got DeLon Wright at 20. Pat Connaughton at 22. And AJ Green at 16. If I had to put a 10th guy, it would probably be Chris Livingston. But he's young, so Doc's not probably going to get excited about getting him in there. And then there's guys like AJ Johnson and Tyler Smith, who they're just not going to play. Marjon Beauchamp. I think that is the most likely 9-man rotation. And as always, if you want to chuck a 10th in there, you got to find extra minutes to take away from Pat or DeLon. And AJ Green could easily lose minutes there as well. But that is how I, at the moment, see the Bucks rotation shaking out. Today's episode is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule, it can be busy. It often is for most of us. You don't have the time to get to the doctors to get treated for ED, but through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims changes men's healthcare, enabling you to get the treatments that you need, make it affordable, and get that sexual health taken care of. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generic alternatives, up to 95% cheaper. You don't need insurance, and that one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. I don't know why I said it that way. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. Let's get into a few more of these 240 games. We'll go to Minnesota, of course, the big trade from them. We saw Julius Randle play in the preseason, so I expect that their opening night rotation is going to be Mike Conley at about 27 minutes. Easily could be 29. Anthony Edwards at 35, Jaden McDaniels at 29, Julius Randle at 33, and Rudy Gobert at 32. I think you could make an argument that McDaniels plays 31. You could make an argument that Mike Conley plays 29, and this is going to be a controversial rotation that I go through here. Because in their second unit, I'm going with a 9-man rotation. I don't think they're going to play Rob Dillingham. I think that the trade made it so that he wasn't as necessary, and we talked about that on the Karl Anthony Towns, Julius Randle trade reaction show, that it really drops the value of Dillingham. I don't think he's going to play. He didn't play in the last game, which you might consider that a dress rehearsal, but when Randle came back, he was a part of the garbage time unit playing like 4 or 5 minutes. And in order to get enough minutes to Reid and DiVincenzo, I don't know where Dillingham fits in. Again, how do we do this? I've got Naz Reid playing 26 minutes, getting a lot of the backup 4 and backup 5 minutes. All right, I've got DiVincenzo playing 26, which some of you will think is light. You might say, well, Donte's going to play way more than that. At the moment, Donte's the 7th man on this team. I've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing 18, who was one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA last season, and he can fill in at the 1, 2, and the 3. He's really good. I've got him at 18 minutes only. And the guy that's been dominating in preseason for this team is Josh Minott. So I've got him 13 minutes. Now, understandably, you could just take Minott out of there and give Rob Dillingham 13 minutes. That is totally, totally feasible. But Minott's been getting so many opportunities. He's been playing unbelievably defensively. He's been shooting the lights out, which is going to come back. He's got one of those absolutely inflated three-point percentages. But he's been dominating. And they used him as a main part of their rotation in the last game while Dillingham was out. So, could be wrong on this, but with the addition of DiVincenzo, the need for Rob Dillingham is not there as much. You mix and match your backup point guards with Ant handling, DiVincenzo handling, Alexander Walker handling. Dillingham, rookie guard on a team that is good, who is undersized, who I really like. Long term, I like him, but I am not convinced, especially after seeing what they did last game, I'm not convinced that he is an every night part of their rotation, especially early on. And if you do believe that, I guess it's a straight swap for Minott out of there. But if they're going 10 deep, like how does that mean Donte doesn't play? He plays 22 minutes. Reid plays 23. I guess they could do that. I don't think they will, but I guess they could. It's a weird one. The New Orleans Pelicans, we got some level of clarification with the idea that Herb Jones is their center. Of course, it's going to be Zion, but can't say that. Can't call Zion a center. Hurts people's feelings. DeJounte Murray, 35 minutes. CJ McCollum, 33, and Brandon Ingram, 33. Zion, 34, and Herb Jones, 31. I think is a pretty reasonable expectation for the minutes for that starting group. The fact that Murray, McCollum, Ingram, and Zion are all there is not great. I hate that CJ is in that mix. He's a bad defender. He can shoot the ball well, but what's he, the 4th offensive option? So what does he do? Stand around and scratch his nutsack as the 4th guy? Herb's going to get Tom Thibodeau's center usage in this grouping. It's a weird grouping. But that's what they're going with because they believe that is their best 5 players, and I do get that. But it's going to be really annoying. Their backup group, I'm not including Trey Murphy in this because he's out to begin the season. I've got 18 minutes for Daniel Tyson, 13 minutes for Yves Missi. I was hoping that they would give Carlo Makovic an opportunity to start, but he's been their 3rd-string center all through the preseason, so that's not happening. So we don't use him as a flyer. We haven't used him as a flyer for a couple of weeks now. They might not use Tyson Missi for 31 combined minutes. I think they will, obviously, because I've got the minutes there, because I don't think you want to run with Zion at center for more than the 17 minutes or so. So I think that Tyson Missi will have to play. But I've got Jordan Hawkins only at 15 minutes. I've got Jose Alvarado at 18 minutes. Now, Javonte Green I've got at 10 because they have no power forwards. They've got Zion, and that's it. I guess Ingram can play some 4, but Javonte Green is a really interesting 3/4 rebounding defensive player. So I've got him in at 10 minutes. You could say they'll go 9 deep, take Javonte's 10 minutes out, give 5 of those to Hawkins, give 2 of those to Alvarado, give 3 of those to Tice or whatever you want to do. And if they do 9, which is a possibility. But I do think that given they just have no 4s at all, I think Green, with Murphy injured, I think Green should be given a look at getting some sort of rotation minutes. The New York Knickerbockers. This is a team that I'm very confident will not go more than 9 deep. How they do that, I'm not sure. But we'll talk about my guess at the moment. The starting 5 is beyond any guess whatsoever. This is obvious. I've got Bronson at 36 minutes, Mikal Bridges 37, Josh Hart at 37, and OG Anunoby at 36. I'd be a little bit worried about injuries for every one of these players, especially OG. But Bronson suffered a few injuries down the stretch last season. A foot problem, and then broke his hand. So we need to be careful with those guys. And I've got Towns at center playing 35 minutes a night. And the things that I thought we get from Towns, we have seen in preseason. Rebounds up, blocks up. That's why he pushes towards the middle of the second round in drafts now. And that was my comment when it happened. The middle of second round, maybe end of first. That is where he is settling now. Very happy with that idea. Very happy. The reserves is where it gets interesting because despite Knicks fans wanting to debate me and argue with me, they are incredibly shallow. Like, incredibly shallow. I think that we get 18 minutes of Precious Achiuwa. I think we get 20 minutes of Juice McBride. Your top 7 is set. Mitchell Robinson's out probably December, January, and even when he comes back, I think he'll be relatively limited and could take longer. But Robinson's out. And then, what the hell happens next? I've got Cam Payne at 11 minutes. I've got Landry Shamet at 10. Now, Shamet hurt his shoulder yesterday. He might not even be available to play. And if Shamet is out, I guess they could go with the car salesman Tyler Kolek. But do you actually want Payne and Kolek to be your... And McBride, who are literally all point guards? Yeah, and Payne can play a little bit off the ball, and so can McBride. But McBride, Payne, and Kolek are all point guards. Kolek will be a very low usage player who's smart, assist-wise. I don't think there's much upside in him. But there is not many minutes available for these guys. And maybe you say that Payne doesn't play at all and Kolek is the guy there. I don't think that'll be the case. I guess there's guys like Paco Mdadier, almost certain he won't be in the rotation. I think Chuma Okeke is still on their roster, but he hasn't got a guaranteed deal yet. This is how I think they roll out, but like that's thin, man. I guess you could say that Shamet doesn't play and Jericho Sims is in there, but I'm pretty sure they'll go with Precious Achiuwa as the backup to Towns and then just go like real small, because they are really small. It's part of the reason why I really do like that boost for Towns, because despite, again, the arguments from Knicks fans, they are not a good rebounding team. Josh Hart, really good for his position. OG, really bad for his position. Jalen Brunson, not a big rebounder. Mikal Bridges, mid. And the bench is guards. It's all small. Towns going to do a lot of stuff. That's how I see their rotation shaking out. So let's talk about the next team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who now are without Isaiah Hartenstein for 5 to 6 weeks. Hartenstein was creeping into the 60s and 70s in drafts, and you can't do that now. I do not like drafting someone injured to enter the season. Now, it is a little bit different in his case. It's a broken hand, and broken hands have a very, very set timeline. 4 to 6 weeks. They came and said 5 to 6 weeks, but when they're back, they're back. There's no real ramp up. There's no back-to-back issue. It's fine. It's not a knee issue. It's not an ankle issue. It's a broken hand. You set it in a cast. It heals. You're ready nearly every single time. Unless there's weird complications or a surgery or whatever, something happens, it can get weird occasionally. But the broken hand is one of the things that you hate from a fantasy point of view because it is 4 weeks every time. But it is 4 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks every time. And it is contained. So that means we are probably getting Hartenstein back Thanksgiving. Start of December. That's a chunk of time. And if you've drafted him, your season's not ruined in the slightest. You're good. I would probably drop him like a round or so down now. Absolutely prioritizing like Pirtles and Zubats as ahead of him. But you might be able to sneak yourself a nice little value. I think their starters will be now Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 34 minutes. I've got Caruso starting, but they also might not. It is very possible they throw Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins into that position. I didn't know if it was going to be Caruso or Hartenstein, and their preseason has given us absolutely nothing to see which way they were leaning, but now one of those options, the Hartenstein starting, is gone. So I've got Caruso at 30 and Dort at 29. Caruso could also have just played 28 minutes. I've got the Bronco Jalen Williams moving back to the 4, which should help his field goals and rebound numbers. We still need him to take more threes. And I've got Chet Holmgren playing 32. Now, Chet played, I think, 29 minutes or 30 minutes a game last season. And part of the reason I was fading Chet Holmgren this season was the more he plays at power forward, rebounds drop, field goals drop, blocks drop as a general rule. And I'm also not entirely convinced of Chet's free throws and three-point percentage, which he maintained for last season. But when you look at them, they started high and they dropped back to college numbers back towards the end. But now that Hartenstein's out, that is 5 weeks of unfettered center play for Chet. So that value where I'll be like, I don't like Chet at the end of the first round, start of the second. Like I'm a bit iffy with him. I'm okay with bumping him up a little bit. Understand that he gets this really strong run early on. It might drop later on, and that's where buy low, sell high trades can happen. That's when you can maybe sell high on that. If Chet is rolling with huge blocks and big rebound numbers before Hartenstein returns and your unwitting other managers don't click to that. But now that impediment, which I thought would sort of cap some of Chet's improvement, or at least keep him stable, is gone for 5 to 6 weeks. So that's a W if you have Chet in that regard. The bench group, I've only got a 9-man rotation for them because I think there are 3 guys there who are going to play 20-plus minutes a night. Cason Wallace, I've got at 21, Isaiah Joe at 22, and Aaron saving basketball Wiggins at 22 as well. The other one I've got is Pig Williams, Vietnamese legend Jalen Williams, but he also might not be ready for opening night. I've got him at 16 minutes as the backup big because Kenrich Williams, who also plays backup center, is also injured. He's out. He won't play. Now, I guess they could play Ousmane Dieng, but he's not a center. And if Jalen Williams, Pig Williams, is not available, I don't know what the hell they do at backup center because they don't have anyone. Like, who is their other center? Like, it's Holmgren, Hartenstein, Pig Williams, Kenrich Williams. 3 of those guys are injured. I'm just checking their roster now. There's literally no one else. They'd have to go small ball with Dylan Jones, maybe, or it's small ball with Ousmane Dieng. They have no centers. So they bloody need to make sure that Pig Williams is available because there's nobody. There's no centers. They will go incredibly small early on because there's no other center that exists on this team. Like literally no other center. Which will be intriguing to see what they do. So I've got Pig Williams there at 16 because they just don't have another big, but that's assuming that he's ready and healthy to go. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. With the NFL season underway, the NBA season ready to tip off, it's time for you to get a big return with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You might be sitting there watching the game. Maybe it's one of your preseason finales for your favorite team and you see something interesting. Oh, they've pulled all the starters. Maybe I can check a live bet on FanDuel. You open it up, you see the stats. You got the live play-by-play there as well. You can make your decisions on the fly with everything in that same screen instead of having to flip through and go to all the different spots to find that information. It's all there on the one screen on FanDuel. And if you are a new customer and you place your first $5 bet, it doesn't even matter if it wins or loses. We want it to win, of course, but it doesn't matter because you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So you can go check out all the odds, season win totals, NBA championships, season stat leaders, season stat over-unders, Wemby specials. All of this stuff is available to check out on FanDuel. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Let us go to the final couple of teams we're going to cover in this version of the show, or this episode. We're going to go to our Orlando Magic. I believe that their starting group is locked in, and I wasn't expecting when I was looking at the reserves to have as much trouble figuring it out, but I did. Jalen Suggs, 30 minutes. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 31. Franz Wagner, 33. Paolo Banchero, 35. That's the starting 4 guys. Easy. I don't know whether Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be available for opening night. He sprained his ankle. I think he will be, and I've put him there at 26 minutes, but that could also be lower because there is a million options that they can go with at center. There's also a million options that they can go with in the backcourt for this team. So it is a tough one to figure out. Wendell, to me, is barely a draftable player in 12-team leagues just because there are so many other guys and some of the stuff that he was able to do previous parts of his career have fallen away. But I still think he's a pretty good player, but there are just a lot of other options. Their bench, I think that they're giving Jonathan Isaac 23 minutes a night. I think that they sign him to that extension and say they expect 20-plus minutes out of him. Yeah, he'll still sit back-to-backs, but he's an unbelievable blocks and steals guy. He rebounds the ball well. You just got to understand the limitations, and in head-to-head, it does become harder than in roto. And in points leagues, he's not as valuable. I've got Mo Wagner at 16 minutes, but if Wendell Carter is out, Goga Bitadze will start and play 23 and be a must-roster player short-term. But I've got Mo as the backup playing 16. Mo and John Isaac will play backup center minutes too. I've got 20 minutes only for Cole Anthony. And now it gets difficult because Gary Harris was the starting shooting guard for this team for a long time. He started the second half of last season, moving Jalen Suggs to the 1. I've only got 13 minutes for Gary here. And honestly, I could make an argument for 20 minutes for Gaz or that he doesn't play at all. I think he'll play, but he might not play because I haven't put Mr. Black in this rotation at all. Anthony Black, the number 6 overall pick last season, who I thought was pretty poor. And I would say that Jet Howard has looked much better through the preseason. Now, again, we could argue whether Jet Howard would play over Anthony Black? Would Jet Howard and Anthony Black play together? Do you need Anthony Black in the second unit when you've got Cole Anthony that runs the point as well? I'm not sure. Also, first round pick, Tristan Da Silva. Where does he fit? Where does he play? Who over? So that's Black and Da Silva. I don't have as part of the rotation, nor do I have Goga Badadze. These 13 guys that it is easy to make an argument that they get playing time. Not even including Caleb Houston, who played 1 million minutes last season. This team is unironically extraordinarily deep. So look, maybe Harris doesn't play. Maybe Harris plays 20 minutes. Maybe Jet Howard doesn't play. Maybe it is Black. Maybe it is Da Silva. Maybe Goga plays instead of Mo. I don't know. That is how I've got it at the moment, and it is entirely confusing. The last team we're going to do on this episode is your Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm working under the assumption that Paul George will not play opening night. I think, and I don't know this, but I think that Nick Nurse will go with Kyle Lowry. Last season down the stretch, they started Lowry next to Maxey. And while Kyle Lowry and Paul George are obviously not the same position, everyone else can push down. So I think that Lowry will start, but it could easily be Gershon Yabusele. It could easily be him as well. It could be KJ Martin, who could start or could get 0 minutes. I've got Maxey at 37 minutes because it's self-branded hat legend Nick Nurse and he plays everyone 1 million minutes. I've got Kelly Oubre at 34, who I don't really like as a fantasy guy, but if Paul George is out and Embiid may or may not play, Oubre's going to do a lot. It's going to be all scoring with middling percentages and maybe 0 assists. Maybe if you're lucky to get 0. I've got Caleb Martin, 31 minutes at power forward, who, I guess, also, he might not start. Maybe it's Yabusele who plays there, who's been pretty good in preseason, Gershon. And I've got Joel Embiid starting at center playing 32 minutes, but I didn't know what to do with this one. He hasn't played in preseason, obviously. He's going to be wearing this knee brace. If he doesn't play, it's very weird considering he played in the Olympics. Did he make it worse? I'm not drafting Joel Embiid in round 1. You know I've been very, very staunch on that. I won't do it. I'm not even sure I'd do it in round 2 anymore, to be honest. I've got him beat at 32 minutes, so I think that's sort of what they'll keep him at. But of course, if he doesn't start, you're going to get 27 to 28 minutes of Andre Drummond. The third string center at the moment is a Dembona. But it could also be Yabusele, who's played a lot of center as well in the preseason. So in the backup situation, I've got 16 minutes for the big avocado, Andre Drummond. I've got 19 minutes for Gershon Yabusele. I've got 27 minutes for Eric Gordon and 17 minutes for Reggie Jackson. Now, you could push Gordon down to 20 minutes, Reggie to 13 minutes, and throw a KJ Martin in there for 15. Easy. Jared McCain suffered an injury last game. It looks like he's fine, but I don't think he's going to be a part of this rotation. Although, it shouldn't be hard at some point for him to overtake Reggie Jackson in the rotation. The only other name there who I think's got really a shot is KJ. I would have hoped it was Ricky Council, but we haven't really seen that develop through the preseason. So that's how I've got the Sixers at the moment, but with some uncertainty about what they do with Yabusele, whether Embiid plays, and just, is Reggie Jackson cooked? Yes, but, will they determine that he's cooked immediately? Because sometimes it takes coaches a little bit of time to come to that realization. And that's part 3 of projecting the team's minutes with the 240 game. We've got 1 more of these to go with 7 more teams left. We'll be doing some mock drafts, probably in between releasing that show. So, if you want to know when these shows are coming, hit the thumbs up, leave your comment down below on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and all the other formats, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.